Greetings. Accessing archive. Authorizing. Access granted. Accessing file.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Absolutely. So I'm a big fan of your product. It's something that I've put on when I'm doing some yoga, some meditation, any type of plant medicine ceremony, and it really is a game changer. So I would love to just open this wormhole up with
Yeah.
you explaining how you got into building a company around Copal and what Copal is, how you discovered it, and what pushed you to go ahead and start bringing this to the world. An amazing offering.
Well, thanks, Matt, and you're using it right. So thank you for that. Applying it to all those different practices you have, or in that way, is exactly the right way. So basically, what copal is essentially it's a plant medicine. It is a sap that comes from a tree in Central America, and it is a particular state of the sap, actually. So most of us, when we say sap, we think of that sticky, gooey stuff dripping from a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Copal is a more of a refined state. It's a harder state of that same sap from this particular tree, and then that same sap even further down the line with the introduction of time is actually amber. So amber is
Mm.
fossilized tree sap. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so there is sort of an interesting story there when you're sort of talking about copal and time and whatnot, because what we at Temple Copal, our focus, the product focus is white copal. And there is a difference between other copals. If you Google copal, there's a lot of different stuff comes up, and you'll see images. Some of it's black, some of it's yellow. A lot of it's you're going to see is yellow and gummy kind of looking.
Mm-hmm.
And we focus on white copal, and what that is it's it's the sap that has been left in its natural state longer. So it's been exposed to the air for a longer duration of time. And with that exposure, it starts to actually begin the process of fossilizing. It goes hard and it turns into what looks more like a white rock, actually. And because of this process that it takes time, it's more scarce per se, because you're seeing it that less and less as the demand for copal rises. You're seeing a lot more yellow and black copal on the market, and what that is it's copal that is immature. It hasn't been left on the tree or exposed to the air long enough to dry and get harder and get that rock hard white pure copal. That's sort of what it is and does, sort of from the botanist perspective, maybe in layman botanist terms. But as a in terms of an application or for usage, it's an aromatic incense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a resin that you can burn, and as soon as it's burned, it releases a very potent smoke that has a very powerful cleansing and healing essence and effect that
Mm-hmm.
is released from it. You'll notice one of the first things it does from an experiential point of view is it tends to immediately ground you and bring you into the present moment. And there's this connection, like an energetic connection to earth. You really feel it. I'm sure you've sat next to like a fire pit or a bonfire out camping or something,
Yeah.
and there's this. It's amazing. There's just kind of this connection to nature in a way. This is why you can sit there at a bonfire for an hour just staring at the fire. But copal has a similar sort of initial onset where you light it and it really brings you to present and to the moment. Then what it tends to do is, and I'm speaking sort of generally because some people say they have different effects when they practice with it or burn it or how they use it. But it tends to elevate your energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Mayans and Aztecs, which it's the lineage that it comes from in terms of cultures, indigenous cultures that were using it in practice, healings, ceremonies, sacrifices, things of that nature, um,
Mm-hmm.
sacred plant medicine journeys. What it does is that this elevation essence, or let's call it a process, starts to
Mm-hmm.
happen, starts to occur and play out. So they believe, these indigenous cultures believe, that what was happening was the smoke is elevating you and your connection to a higher level of consciousness, to essentially these divine realms, these divine elevations, and that the smoke was sort of that doorway.
It absolutely does that for me. The smell is very pungent, but very pleasurable. It's new to a lot of people. I notice when I burn it, some people will come into the house and be like, "What is that? It smells incredible. It smells, whoa, like something I don't know about." And that's a really cool aspect of your company, is bringing this new aroma to the world, because I mean, I know it's ancient and stuff, but still in America a lot of people have lived their life up to age 20, 25, however old, and never had the experience of smelling this exact smell. So it's cool that you're able to bring that from, I think it originates in kind of South America and Middle America, is that right?
Central America, yeah.
Central America,
Yeah.
um, to the modern person in America, to in today's world, and I do find it very helpful for grounding, like you're saying. It's hard to kind of be lost in the thought world when there is this very powerful aroma present, and especially it smokes quite a bit more than a normal incense. So it's funny because people will come up the stairs and they'll kind of see like smoke kind of oozing out of my room a little bit, and then they'll be like, what's going on in there, man?" It's like, "Oh, it's copal," and get to explain, how I met you and all the stuff, which I'll explain for our listeners here, that I met you at an event that took place in both Los Angeles and New York called Whitma, and it was a very like a wellness oriented panel event, but we also had a lot of vendors and people who would show up and have like kind of holistic products that just kind of add like a holistic dimension to your life. And you are one of the products. I think you just like kind of gave me some like a single pack of copal, and I brought it home, and man, I used it up quick, so I had to get some more from you. Oddly enough, you kind of are from San Antonio, where I'm from, isn't that right?
Oh yeah, synchro destiny, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So you came to San Antonio, not too long after that event, and was able to hook me up with some more, and
Yeah.
it's just become such an amazing part of my weekly practice. I don't burn it every day, but it would go too fast. But I do probably several times per week. So for people who are unfamiliar, it looks like an incense stick. It burns like an incense stick, but it doesn't smell like any incense that's available at the gas station or the head shop or wherever you typically kind of go for your incense. It's a very powerful, very pungent, very effective plant medicine, like you're saying, and it can go hand in hand with a ton of things, especially ceremony, yoga, music, meditation. I mean, even for me, if I just kind of want to turn up and play some loud music and kind of vibe around in my room or our studio, I love it. It just adds a new dimension to the place and really lights up my senses. Like, how have you heard that people typically use it and find use for it in their home?
Well, Many different ways, and everything you said is, again, it's spot on. What it really is doing is it's an energy activator. So however you tend to, use it, whether if it's, listening to music or meditation, silent versus um, loud, or, with a lot of sonic energy,
Mhm.
it increases that connection. So that's where you can use this with intention. You can really use it as an energetic amplifier. If you want to deepen your meditation, like the copal, sit with it and you'll see it happen. You'll feel it happen. If you want to
100%.
just connect with the energy of playing music or whatever, the atmospheric kind of quality, then what's going to happen is sound is going to travel. The smoke is
Mhm.
going to travel. You'll see the smoke fill the room and you'll see how it kind of activates a space. And
Mhm.
some of this stuff it may sound a little woo woo to people, and that's totally cool. But what it really is it is a unique incense. It's not like anything most people, especially in the States, are familiar with at all. This is
Mhm.
really a particular plant derived medicinal aromatic incense.
Mhm.
And when you light it, you will feel what it does to you
Mhm.
energetically. And
Mhm.
it is still used today in many, many ayahuasca ceremonies. It's everyone I've ever sat in has had copal.
Mhm.
It's used in sacred mushroom journeys, all kinds of healings with curanderos, curanderas. Cacao ceremonies. And then
Mhm.
again, when our product Temple Copal it's in a slightly more refined form, in the sense that the copal is dipped. They're handmade dipped sticks. So
Mhm.
they're in that typical stick like incense form, which is convenient because then you can, burn it at home in your living room or bathroom while you're taking a bath, or travel with the sticks. A lot of copal, uh, in its when it's pulled directly from the tree, what happens is it's dripping into a vase that's tied to the tree. The tree's dripping the sap into the vase. Over time, the vase eventually fills up, or a vessel of some sort, ceramic vessel.
Mhm.
The vase vessel fills up, and it hardens over time, and then that vessel has to be broken off. And often, so you'll see it if you're in Central America, Mexico, you often see it in these rocky chunk like forms.
Mhm.
And it's beautiful like that, but it requires what's often called a copalera. It looks sort of like a ceramic holy grail, or something,
Yes.
and that would have a little fire burning in it with a charcoal tablet wafer,
Mhm.
and then the chunks of copal sit on it. Most people in America or the West are familiar with this sort of thing when frankincense and myrrh come up, because
Yes.
that's a little bit more widely spread. Those are also aromatic resins, not indigenous from Central America, mostly the Middle East, Africa, whatnot, and uh, um, what am I trying to say? That part of the world, and
Okay.
so Morocco also as well.
Mhm.
So it's similar in that sense, but what we are doing with Temple Copal is we are introducing it as a way where you can burn it in incense stick form.
Mhm.
Um, The most important thing to mention here, you mentioned Whitma and health and wellness brands and whatnot that had vendors at the event. Really, what we're trying to do as an offering, being a brand, a packaged offering, a product, is we're trying to also bring a voice to sustainable alternatives,
Mhm.
because as spirituality, health and wellness, yoga gets more and more widespread and popular globally, which is fantastic, some of these tools and medicines do as well. And some of them are being over exhausted. Like, for example, sage and Palo Santo. They're both
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, um, wonderful aromatic cleansing tools. Um, but the problem is the demand is so high that there's literally places in the world where they're clear cutting forests to grow sage,
Right.
just to fill the demand, which is so ironic and sort of silly that they would be, clear cutting nature to grow something that's natural, but because the demand is not natural, it's
Right.
exhausting the planet. And
Right.
copal is great because it's an alternative in the sense that it's what's called wild harvest. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we can only take what the tree gives. And I don't
Yeah.
even like using the word take because it implies that we're pulling something from it when really the tree is weeping this sap.
Right.
The Mayans and Aztecs would call it the blood of the tree.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, so it again, it has that sacred context and indigenous connection to nature, the blood of the
Mm-hmm.
tree, and this offering from nature that's being, it's being dripping from the tree or being weeped out, cried out from the tree. And
Mm-hmm.
so, because it's wild harvest, there's no way to create a system to get more copal. I mean, if you wanted to plant some trees, some copal trees, and wait 200 years, sure. But it's really what it is it's sourcing it, the offering from nature. And, it's boutique in that sense, or wild harvest. When using copal, you should, if you use it with intention, you can see and feel the results. You get more out of it. Um, and so that small batch kind of essence that makes it more precious, especially it being white copal, really lends itself to that kind of energy anyway. Um,
Absolutely. So the sustainable harvest method is, it's not only better for the planet, but it's an awesome offering to be able to give to people that actually care about the planet and want, nature to thrive and stuff. And I think that those are the type of people who really can appreciate what Copal has to offer. A lot of these people are in the plant medicine culture. They're people who have maybe tried sacred mushrooms, ayahuasca, any of the numerous plant medicines that are done traditionally and that are finding their way into Americans' lives, little by little, every day at a time. I think that it's kind of like the Mother Gaia sending out her emergency signals to wake people up that, hey, the rainforest is in danger, and potentially humans are destroying the planet, and hey, we need to wake up and look at what's going on. And that's what these plant medicines are really good at providing for our consciousness, a new perspective, a way to look at nature as a part of it instead of separate from it. And Copal is an amazing tool to kind of connect deeper with plant medicines, but also just deeper with your own meditation practice, with your own daily practice of whatever you kind of do to connect and ground and return to a moment of stillness. So moving into kind of your discovery of Copal, how did you discover it? Like, where were you? What happened? What called you to it so strongly?
oh man, well, synchro destiny. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
it's so much of a divine design in how it played out in terms of the sequence of events. I mean, in a nutshell, I moved from New York City to Los Angeles about 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I, and she's in the health and wellness world, in consciousness world and whatnot, as a curator and producer. And so I've had a a long history as an artist, a fine artist, a career for about 18, 20 years at this point. And moving to LA was a whole new change of environment, whole new change of scenery, and it really, the floodgates started to open per se with her career and the community she was tapping into in the health and wellness world.
Mhm.
And long story short, kind of what I was noticing very quickly was how um, that community of health and wellness and mindfulness and was was really open from the get-go. Where I came from a world, the fine art world is not as open as a lot of people would like to believe that it is from the outside. But being an insider, it's more of a closed system. In that sense, it's more exclusive versus inclusive.
Okay.
And the health and wellness world was really nice. I liked sort of, you know, by hanging out with my wife and meeting some of the people she was meeting and brand owners and whatnot. I really liked that vibe and environment. And at one point, this was a few years back, I said, oh, it'd be so cool to sort of have a brand or something that really gave back to people, and connected people with, I was getting really into meditation at the time, with themselves, and also, was also a different kind of creative outlet for me. And,
Mhm.
it's funny how, because that's not really important, but after the sequence of events played out that led me to Copal, I could start to see all the breadcrumbs, the pieces of the puzzle, how I, you know, I manifested it, even
Mhm.
unknowing. Um, I was in Mexico, and my wife and I, we were in Sayulita, which is
Okay.
on the Pacific coast side, Mexico, and we had a day set aside to go visit some new friends of ours, and um, these friends work with cacao, as a ceremonial plant medicine. And so, and they had lots of experience with ayahuasca and things of that nature, but their focus as shamans has been, for a handful of years now, has been cacao, because
Mhm.
of what I believe, my understanding is because cacao is a little bit more accessible. It's a heart opener.
Right.
And whereas Aya is a little bit more niche, let's say, even though
Sure.
that's changing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, it, we spent the whole day with them, and all day they had this stuff burning,
Mhm.
and I just felt so grounded and connected to nature.
Yeah.
Before in the past, I'd never really been the kind of guy that just like takes off my shoes or walks around barefoot and stuff. And
Mhm.
everything just started to work that way then. I really just, we also, the day was magical, of course, being with, shamans
Right.
and their energy and their connection. And then, but they introduced me to the copal and what the smoke medicine from copal does, and how it's been a blessing for them. And basically, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it just stumbled
Mhm.
into my path. There's a little bit more synchrodestiny into the story with it, with my wife Anna, and how she had this experience a few weeks prior in the woods up in Oregon, during a
Mhm.
cacao ceremony that they actually hosted, the same couple I was mentioning. And
Okay.
we didn't know that they lived in near Sayulita in Mexico, where we were going. So it was just one thing after another, a sequence of events and chance, and how is this? And then it just really was right there before me, and I knew it just that day. After having been introduced to the Copal, that there was something really special there that I wanted to work with, and so I got some Copal from them, and then developed my relationship with it. Started researching it more, and
Mhm. Was it kind of the more amber kind,
No,
or was it the white?
it was the same white kind, and they
Oh,
kind
okay.
of talked to me about the white kind being about in Mexico the white copal's 10 times more expensive than regular copal. And
Mm-hmm.
it was interesting and how it's more scarce and how it's dried longer, and that's when it goes white. And it was so funny because we were in Mexico like another week or something, and I went and I bought a bag of copal from this little shop in this little village,
Yeah.
and even this guy started to talk to me about copal, and then we got a massage, and that guy started to talk to me about copal. And it was just like
It
there
was
was
all over. It was calling you.
it was all, and what it was, and there were all these messages. That's what it was. It was messages. It was signs that it was speaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I'm lighting some right now.
yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I got the whole room full of it right now. It's great.
It smells so good.
Yeah, the first hit, like when you light it, is always like, oh, kind of like, wow, I forgot how pure it is. Like
Yes.
it's got this kind
It's
of moment.
funny. Yeah, and it does have the slightest bit of nostalgia towards being at a campfire or having a fireplace, and you're lighting that up. Just like
Exactly.
little bit of like spice aroma, but it
Mhm.
still has its own unique smell, but it definitely gives you like it's like a mini fireplace vibe
It
with
is,
all kind
yeah,
of other properties too.
yeah,
You're speaking a lot of cacao, and I know we've
yeah.
off the air talked about cacao. I'd love to just dive in on that and see, like what do you know about cacao and its origins and how it's used, and especially my real question is how much do people drink in a ceremony? Is it 1 cup? Is it 10 cups? Like, you know what I mean? What have you experienced?
Yeah, well, I think my wife Anna would tell you something like it's 45 grams as a ceremonial dose or something, but I think it's wherever you're willing to go is how much you drink.
Hmm.
Just like ayahuasca, it
Yeah.
and it's same thing. Cacao obviously isn't psychoactive in that sense. It's a different type of plant medicine. But I think one of the reasons I've been talking about it so much, or it's come up, is because honestly, I've been drinking it every day of this quarantine.
Nice. No, I've been eating the chips, not every single day, but
Yeah.
like once every 3 4 days. I'm just breaking this Keith's cacao bar, with my
Uh-huh.
my fingers and just grabbing like a handful of chips and tossing them in. I
Yeah.
honestly I
Yeah.
ordered some of this cacao from Anna,
Hmm.
and I have not made it into an actual drink yet
Yeah.
because it works so good. Just throwing the chips in your mouth, it still works. There's no mess. There's no cleanup.
Yeah.
You don't have to prepare anything, which I do want to do. I do want to
Yeah.
prepare it, but
Yeah.
I've already gone through about a quarter of the the brick here, just eating it. And I
Yeah.
mean, I'll explain the effects or the sensations I get. I researched it a little because I was curious why I was feeling very energized, and there's actually a little bit of caffeine in it. So
Mhm.
if the source is correct, that what I read, so there's a little bit of caffeine. There's this chemical called theobromine,
Mhm.
which is slightly psychoactive in the same sense as you grow up and you always hear about dark chocolate or even just milk chocolate, but especially dark chocolate. Maybe it makes you a little turned on, makes you a little ooh, like feeling the vibes a little.
Yeah. It's a connector, just like
Hmm.
just like Copal. It's doing
Hmm.
something. It's activating some kind of. It's like it loosens you up and connects you.
Yeah, it does. And what I found in the experience is because a number of me and my roommates here have used it together, is yeah, it dissolves boundaries a little bit, and it dissolves your um the kind of like the thinking you, maybe the ego you that's like ready to say something, and it just makes me want to listen, you know It
Mm-hmm.
makes me just want, like, if I just want to hear my friend talk. I just want to hear what he has to say, and there's no hurry for me to put my 2 cents in, and it just feels very connected in that sense. Like, yo, I feel
That's so
like
nice.
I'm on a new level of like peace and connection with this person, and I really turned my listener aspect on. And then as well, you get a little bit of like a flushing sensation, a little bit of a warmness going. Your hands are a little warm, a little tingly, a little sweaty, and not in a gross or bad way, in a very comforting way, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And You feel a little uppity. Like when I ate some kind of at night, I ended up staying up a few extra hours, which I was okay with because I was having a great time. But for me, those have been the experiences. It's communal, heart opening, a little bit altering of how your body feels, and just the sense that you get warm. You feel a little warm, a little pulsy sensation going, and that's how it's been for me. How do you feel off of it?
I would say the same. I mean,
Hmm.
it's definitely a heart opener. It connects you to the present moment, in that sense. So you're grounded in the present, and it's always been real positive for me.
Hmm.
I feel elevated, and of course, I think almost every time I drink cacao, I'm burning copal too.
True, true, true.
So,
Double whammy.
yeah, double whammy for real. And and this particular quarantine time has been, every day is a ceremony. I mean,
Hmm.
literally every day I'm drinking cacao and lighting copal. And it's funny because that actually ties in the sort of the, I don't know if slogan's the right word, but our kind of ethos or little, all right, let's call it a slogan, is with Temple Copal is life is a ceremony, earth is a temple.
Oh,
And
love that.
yeah, and really that I wanted, when I created that, it was really about, when something's a ceremony, that typically means that there's intention and presence there. And that's
Hmm.
what the Copal does. And then earth is a temple really kind of lends itself to this idea that this is something given. It's an offering direct from nature. Um, and so those kind of two lines really, I think, tap into what we're going for with Temple Copal. And
Hmm.
on the topic of cacao, it's similar, man. I mean, what is cacao doing? Well, it's you're eating, you're ingesting the energy, of something
Hmm.
that's pure energy from nature. So
Right.
some people, they have like their first cacao experience and they're like, "Ooh, this is real bitter," but they're coming from a vantage point of being familiar with chocolate, and
Yeah.
that's where they're kind of skewed, because everything they've been conditioned to know about this is that, like, cacao is, from this reference point of chocolate, and chocolate is not, pure. There's
Right.
additives, sugar, whatever, all kinds of stuff. Whereas
Tons of stuff.
it
Yeah.
with the yeah, and the cacao, is pure. It's raw, and you can feel it and you can taste it, and then you really feel it with the energy, what it does energetically.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, uh, it's a good lesson that, nature is powerful. Nature has
Yeah.
healing tools in abundance everywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I believe how cacao is harvested is there's are these giant fruits. They kind of dangle off these trees. You open up the fruit. There's not much in the way of like flesh of the fruit. There's just a lot of seeds on the inside. Isn't that right? Just
Uh,
like tons of seeds,
like
right?
it's like a big pod. It looks like an alien kind of
Yeah.
Venus flytrap looking pod thing. It's wild,
Mm-hmm.
and the coloration even of the pod is beautiful. But yeah, you open it up and the cacao beans it's like white and has a lot of pulp. These
Yeah.
beans are and it really is like something you'd see in the Alien movie. These pods
Mm-hmm.
inside.
Totally. No, I've
Um,
seen the pictures, and it kind of reminds me of jackfruit. I don't know if you know much about
yeah,
jackfruit, but
yeah,
it has a similar, because when you cut open a jackfruit, it's like kind of segmented and stuff. It kind of reminded me of that a little.
yeah. I'm not too familiar with jackfruit, but in my mind, I have a vision of what you're speaking about. So I
Yeah,
see it.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
jackfruit is like a common meat replacement. People say it has like a texture of pork or chicken
yeah.
or something, and they cook it that way, and then you're able to eat like vegan beef tacos or pork
Oh
tacos,
yeah,
but it's fruit. But then
yeah.
you take those beans and you don't you kind of put them under heat?
Oh, the cacao beans.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a whole process. It really is like they sort of heat the bean, and this is where I'm no authority on this, but I've just had that one day working with our friends that are
Yeah.
shamans working with cacao from bean and taking it from the pure pod from the bean state. But yeah, you heat it up and it sort of loosens this shell on it, and that's when
Hmm.
you break that off, and then you're getting down to the raw cacao bean, um,
Got it.
and then I guess you can dry it out and leave it in that bean form, um,
Hmm.
or that's where you can take it to the bar form from there.
True that. Yeah. So kind of like coffee beans, but cacao beans. They're both very dark. They both have caffeine.
Hmm.
Both bitter on their own.
Hmm.
That's true. I personally have been a fan of dark chocolate from a young age, so I it wasn't that big of a shock for me when
Yeah,
I finally tried this stuff. It was like, oh, it's kind of like darker dark chocolate,
right,
no milk, just pure bean.
right.
It doesn't look like a bean because it comes in at least this particular brand comes in a brick, so it's just kind of like this big brown square brick, and you just kind of break it up, and it breaks up really easy. I can do it with my fingers, actually, just kind of break off a piece,
Hmm.
so it's not
Yeah,
overly hard. But
yeah.
that's awesome. Very cool, very cool. So when it comes to other plant medicines, I know you have had several experiences down in the jungle and down in Costa Rica and stuff. And so I'm just curious if you're down to delve into some of these powerful experiences you've had, because I feel like that ties into the mission of what you're doing here on Earth, and bringing lovely offerings like Temple Copal to the people of the world.
Yeah. Oh, where to start? Um, my plant medicine journey started with my interest in um, the more I got into meditation and consciousness and self inquiry and self actualization work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my interest hasn't been specifically on plant medicine or psychedelics, but what I found through my process of working on myself is that they're incredibly effective tools.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Absolutely. I mean, second to none, almost. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I don't think anything can give you what these plants can give you. I mean,
yeah,
the closest thing I can think of is an extremely powerful lucid dream that just sticks with you for years. But that's rare. That's a rare thing. So yeah, these
yeah,
medicines are
yeah,
absolutely, yeah, just some of the most powerful experience givers on the planet. They'll give you something that sticks with you for a while.
yeah. There's a reason there's a strain of mushrooms called golden teachers.
100%. And I love the golden teachers. Shout out golden teachers.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, my introduction with plant medicine really came from, I was never like was never one of these guys in high school that took a lot of psychedelics or mushrooms.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was so focused on going off to college in New York City and doing so through focusing on my art. I had a friend more recently who was talking about this experience he had with mushrooms, and this was a few years ago at this point, but it was so interesting what he was telling me. And the thing that was the most interesting was all the uh, all the synchronistic events that happened outside of that mushroom journey. And that was so profound to me what he was saying, these things that he experienced in his journey, but then came into being, so to speak.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've told my story on many podcasts in the past, so I won't go too long on it, but that is exactly what happened to me. Was I knew all along what I loved and where I was meant to go and what my path was, but some, society and parental pressure and all the different things like try to convince you to go somewhere else than where you know you need to be. And it wasn't until like these mushrooms really sat me down like a grandpa and just been like, "Hey, Sonny, listen, you got to follow your heart. You got to do what you're called to do. Like that's the best thing you can do. It's your gift.
It's
It's
your
your
gift.
gift. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, don't throw your gift out in the street. You know what I mean? Just use it.
Yeah.
Use your gift.
Use it.
Uh,
Yeah,
I love it.
absolutely. Yeah. So basically, long story short, this friend of mine inspired me, like, oh, I gotta, try this. And I thought, well, I'll give mushrooms a go. And that didn't happen. What happened was DMT happened.
Ah, okay.
So here I was essentially in that realm of psychedelics. I was, had no experience, but I'm the type of person that anything I get interested in, I go full in. Like I do research. I every 5 minutes I get, I'll be watching a YouTube video on something or reading an article or ordering books on a subject. So I dove in pretty hard, and I was already knew this was coming to some degree because I was so interested in some transcendent experiences I had had through sensory deprivation tanks and sound baths,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of using those as a trajectory. I knew if I can hit these really transcendent spaces with these sorts of tools, then I know with psychedelics I can go further, and
Oh yeah.
and maybe it would even be to the extent where uh, like it was planned, because the transcendent experience I had had off of a sensory deprivation tank and sound baths, I didn't know it was going to happen. So,
Right.
and they were profound. Some of them
Yeah.
actually were extremely profound. Now that I've done quite a bit of psychedelics, and I'm still amazed. But
Mm-hmm.
so it was all meant to be in that sense. But my first journey was with uh, uh, plant medicine called changa, which is it's DMT, and it's often referred to as smokable ayahuasca. It's a
Mm-hmm.
DMT that has been put into a solvent and then blended into like some herbs, often chacruna, copy, the ayahuasca vine. And
Mm-hmm.
so you smoke it, inhale it, and you have your journey. And I did that out in the desert, and then the first 30 seconds of that experience, I knew, whoa, like I've
Mm-hmm.
been exploring my whole life, but this is where the real exploration is done, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, without getting into too much detail on that experience, which was incredible and its story on its own, I just got more and more interested in researching what what is this? What's happening? What is this connection
100%.
with consciousness and these psychedelics? Like, and so I got really into Ramdas. Ramdas was someone that I thought bridged this gap. He did.
Yes.
with
100%.
between like the Western world, the scientific mind, the materialist paradigm, and then the Eastern ethos of mysticism and consciousness and spirituality. And so psychedelics for me became the next step in my evolutionary process as a person. To
100%. I think it does that for a lot of people.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah, I think that they're like just a tool to take you on an evolutionary journey, and they're so
yeah.
powerful, especially if you respect them and you're able to integrate what you're learning.
I gotta say though, I agree with you, but it's not a for sure thing.
Oh,
There
yeah.
are a lot of people that will have a psychedelic journey, even sit in ceremony, and either they're so egoically calcified and closed off that they just won't open up, or
Mhm.
um, it won't change them. Some people are assholes, and they're still going to be assholes. Um,
Totally, totally.
so I think what's happening is that the plant medicine, the psychedelic, is a catalyst for evolution and for change and an opportunity, but some people still might not grab it and walk that path, and
Mhm.
that's okay because that's where they're
Yeah,
at.
that's true.
But for me, I just immediately it resonated with me. My first ayahuasca experience was down at a place called Rhythmia, which is now like my second home.
Mhm, mhm.
And my first night was beautiful. It was incredible. The first half of the night, but the second half of the night was the most challenging night of my life. It was so difficult. And
Mhm.
that night alone, I went through thousands and thousands of layers of my mind and myself. So, there's a
Right.
lot there, and I was having a difficult time processing that first night, but
Mhm.
I realized, with the integration and really more self inquiry work and acceptance and surrender, I realized what that first night was all about, why it was beautiful, then why it was so challenging, and what it was that I was shown and experienced. And then that following night, and of course that integration period happens for months. I
Yes.
mean, 6, 7 months later, I would be meditating or taking a bath. I take baths every day in darkness and do a
Wow,
meditation,
that's
and
awesome.
it's really it saved my life in a lot of ways. I went through a really challenging business situation a few years back in 2017, and meditation saved my life, and
Wow.
sitting in stillness and darkness saved my life, and then
Mhm.
and changed my life. It created the life I live now. And so, but back to the psychedelic stuff, or ayahuasca, arrhythmia, that integration from that first night, I would get clarity, even more so, more clarity, deeper depths, um, 6, 7 months later. It was so
Wow.
profound, and I went in that second night, the following night, Tuesday night, and had the best night of my life that night, that
Mhm.
experience. So, yeah, and since then I've done multiple journeys, and been back to Rhythmia, and gone
Mhm.
deeper and deeper. And this last time I was just there, and uh, when was this? Beginning of March.
Okay.
Uh, I'd like to say I went all the way, but I know that as soon as I say that, that there's way more all the way to go. So,
Right.
um,
That's funny. That's an interesting part about psychedelics is there always seems to be more information waiting.
mhm,
So I think that's the whole key of integration, and not learning too much there because you won't be able to process without integrating a few things before. So it's like go to these deep philosophical spiritual planes where you can see what seems to be truth in its raw form, without your ego in the way, without all of your experiences coloring what you're seeing, and allow you to get a glimpse of the true nature of what we are. And we are eternal beings. People would say souls, people would say there's reincarnation, or the kind of concept of nothing can be created or destroyed. It just is. So
Mm-hmm.
if we go beyond and come back, we know that it's funny because it's like it is an ego death. They say the word death a lot, and excuse me, it sounds scary to people, but it gave me the lesson, like this ego death experience with psychedelics, that death isn't to be feared. It isn't to be this like terrible thing that happens. It's just part of this journey, and when it happens, similarly to psychedelics, like how it kind of induces anxiety, but then it shows you its glory at the same time. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since psychedelics, I feel like I've moved beyond the unknown of death and thinking that it is kind of a bad thing, and rather I think of it more as a natural thing, and I'm not going to say a good thing. You don't want to rush to it, but I'm saying, like, when it happens, it's just as natural as going to sleep at night.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And there's nothing to fear. And
No.
it's just another transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um,
100%.
yeah. Ayahuasca is a powerful vibratory energy. And
Mm-hmm.
it really is, if when people are open to the experience and are ready, when they feel that call, it really is a beautiful opportunity to um, get the light, see some truth, some truth about yourself, who you are, the life you've lived, maybe what you've done, where
Right.
you've maybe treated people the wrong way or made some mistakes, but also let that go. Forgive yourself, forgive other people. And this is where they talk about, when you sit in ceremony, you hear this word a lot, healing.
Right.
Um, and when you become a little bit more familiar with these environments of sitting in ceremony and these people that um, host these kinds of platforms or are open-minded, you hear that word a lot because it really becomes true, but it's true on a whole nother level. It's not the sort of Western way of, oh, you get a cut, it heals. It's a deeper thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happening even sitting with yourself, and copal and cacao and in yoga. You are healing because you're remembering. You're remembering
Mm-hmm.
what your true nature is, that you are not, your life is not about paying bills and worrying about this and that. Your life
100%.
is all part of this divine cosmic uh energy that's unfolding all the time. Nature, you're part of it. And it's a beautiful ride, and ayahuasca also deepened my understanding and connection with copal because I I wasn't familiar at the time in the beginning. My relationship with Copal was from what I had already directly experienced. And then stepping into these new situations of sitting in ceremony with ayahuasca, Copal is used throughout the ceremony to go around the room, the maloka, the temple, to cleanse the energy. And
Mm-hmm.
again, like I mentioned earlier, Copal is an activator, and you feel it head
Yep.
on right when it's coming in an ayahuasca ceremony, because that energy, when that copal comes around, the billowing smoke is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It can be scary when you're new to it, because you can feel the energy building on such a profound vibratory level. Some people have a purge when the copal comes around.
Oh,
um,
wow.
I've had moments where I've been like, "Oh shit, not again! No, like I'm not ready for that build yet." And I've also
Oh,
had
yeah.
moments where um, in the smoke, I could see the energetic field of consciousness and see the grid, the energy grid of everything, like through the
Right.
veil. And that was beautiful. And I could, just feel the Copal taking me to that beyond body, higher level vibratory field. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So
I love it. What do you say is the most challenging aspect of taking ayahuasca and even, being around Copal on ayahuasca?
the most challenging aspect is when you got to learn, you have to give it all up.
Right.
That can be tough because it's easy now to talk about in this kind of plane to talk about like, oh, giving up, surrender. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're having the direct experience of this is the moment to surrender, it can be more challenging. Of course, there's some aficionados that are so well versed in this space they can let go in a second.
Sure,
They don't
sure.
even have to consciously think about it. They're already there. And that's master yogis. They knew I am not my body. They knew it. Their consciousness level, not all of them, of course, but particular ones, just, you know, Parahasa Yogananda,
Yep.
for example, like, he knew like I am not my body. I'm consciousness. This is an experience. I'm consciousness. And it's one thing to hear that and hear people talk about it, but when on ayahuasca, when you're confronted with letting go of everything, it can be very challenging. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had a few ego deaths at this point in time, and I've had ones that I thought were profound, and then this last go of ceremonies that I did, it just got way more profound than I ever could have imagined. But to get to
Mm-hmm.
that level, it was more challenging than I
Yeah.
thought I was going to experience. I kind of thought,
Yeah.
oh, I've done this numerous times now. It'll be less challenging. That's not necessarily the case because it showed
Mm-hmm.
me that's your ego that thinks that.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
I imagine it's saying, like you even beginning to think that you think what's going to happen is
Mhm.
just how much you have to learn.
Oh yeah, the
You
ego is
know?
a subtle, subtle, tricky bastard of a framework.
Mhm.
Really subtle and slips its way in any way it can. Um,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
funny because as I've been around very practiced people, who venture into the psychedelic space, it's like they can't. Well, it's not that they can't. Is that they sometimes will just say, "There's really no way to put it into words. It's just something you have to experience." Like we put it into words because we create a story about what happened, and that is like the encapsulation of the journey, the trip, whatever you call it. It's like, well, here's the trip, here's what happened to me, but I cannot tell you what's going to happen to you because it's completely unique to you and your set and your setting and who you are and what you've been through and what you need to learn, because everyone has different things that they might need to learn. As long as you're someone predisposed to spiritual experience, it can help show you where things happened and why they happened, and you can get some kind of, what's it called, closure from learning and seeing from an altered state, from a higher perspective, what happened, why, and how to go about healing.
Yep. And that's where the healing's done. And that's you hear this term "doing the work" a lot
Hmm.
in reference to ayahuasca ceremonies. You're doing
Hmm.
the work. That's especially with people that have been carrying trauma, like all those examples you mentioned. We
Hmm.
all kind of are on some level, some degree, some obviously much deeper, much more interwoven and complex and spider webbed, but it really is. That's the work. It's when you have courage, you step up, you see it, you experience what you need to experience in that journey, and you let it go, and you know that the medicine
Mhm.
is there to heal you. It's working
Right.
with you to show you this is something you got to let go of, you know,
Mhm.
or heal. And
Yeah.
it's profound. It's divine intelligence. It's beyond. The reason it's so hard to speak of, in my opinion, or put words on, is because the truth is it's beyond words. It's
Yeah.
like it's beyond the mind. So therefore, to put it in the container of the mind is already limiting it, because it's so limitless and boundless in its nature and how it functions and understands and communicates. You know, you can't just pin it down. You
Mhm.
know, one of the first things, talking about pin it down, no pun intended, but one of the first things I wrote down
Mhm.
in one of my journeys was I wrote, and I'm not looking at it now, so don't quote me on this, but you can read it in the book I'm writing. But it was something to the effect of, trying to describe this is like trying to catch a waterfall with your bare hands. You just
Wow.
you can't do it. There's no way.
Totally.
You can get your
Yeah.
hands wet, but that's it.
I just imagine, like, looking up at a giant towering waterfall and holding your hands up, just being, "How do I expect to capture this?" And
Yeah,
you just can't.
you can't.
'Cause it's like a tidal wave, it's like a rain not a rain, a waterfall,
Yeah.
and, yeah, like, the cascading information from the transcended realms just, like,
Hmm.
dropping onto you like a ton of bricks, and
Yeah.
then it's like, how like, "What happened?"
Yeah. So anytime
You know?
someone tells you like a really profound psychedelic story, then you can just know, holy shit, it was like 1,000 times more profound than they're even describing it, you know?
Yes,
So it's
yes,
like, wow, you know?
yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah, man, it's powerful stuff.
So So after an intense experience like this, what is the following day like? How does it follow up?
Yeah. I mean, I can only speak for Rhythmia, where I've gone and actually sat in, you know, these ceremonial settings with intention and whatnot, in a this container that they have built and constructed. I've done
Mhm,
ceremonies elsewhere, but they've been uh, obviously with intention and whatnot, but it's been orchestrated. Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, bunch of friends get together, say, "Hey, we're going to do this," or you know,
mhm.
you get catch wind of, you know, a ceremony
Sure.
held at someone's property or something.
It's more free flowing and maybe less structure like a retreat
Exactly.
center. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's better in that sense for people that have already worked with plant medicines before. But you know, Rhythmia as a container does have an incredible integration,
Mhm,
classes and basically program and teaching. You know, they're there for that, because you know, one of the reason integration is so important with these experiences is because we are so conditioned to our life operating in these particular patterns. It's like a groove in a record. And
mhm,
so, you know, in order to re-groove and to change those grooves, those ruts that we've created from years and years of thinking a certain way, doing a certain task, living a certain way, uh,
mhm.
being part of a particular whatever, part of the
Mhm.
culture, group,
Yep.
the powerful plant medicines can rewrite all that. They can and show you all this new stuff, but the integration really shows you that ultimately you are the creator of your destiny. It's your
Mhm.
choice to take the teachings and what you learned and actively choose to embody those teachings and remember them and live
Mhm.
them. And anyone can go and have a radical experience and be like, oh yeah, I did that thing that one time. But if you go and you have a profound experience and you put effort and energy into the integration and implementation of those teachings, that's when you are starting to walk the path.
Yep.
And that's where it is important, I think, to note that there are a lot of people, especially in the psychedelic community, that there's sort of these misnomers or these things that, like, oh, if you've done a lot of plant medicine work, you're really tapped in or you're really uh, conscious. That's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily true. And I think
Mm-hmm.
I started to touch on this earlier in this conversation, but it requires you making that choice to really integrate the teachings. And
Yep.
a place like Rhythmia, they're designed because, the founder, Jerry, who built that place, he knows he's done enough plant medicine and done enough self work to know, in order for this to really change and to really get the healing that lasts, you've got to choose to live that life with that new awareness. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then, you know, on the other hand, some people walk in, they have a profound experience, and they are changed then and there, and they're never the same. Where
Mm-hmm.
they quit smoking, they quit drinking, things of that nature
Right.
are pretty common. But it's some of the more subtle stuff: how you treat people, how you
Yeah.
how you carry yourself. Are you how much your ego is at play
Mm-hmm.
in the world, and how much you're sort of, you know, acting from a place of that's not true. That's some idea you created, but it's not really what you want. It's not really from the heart. It's not really loving. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it'll really
Mm-hmm.
work to activate all that stuff, and then again, it's your work to integrate it.
Wow. I love it. No, that was spot on. Super well said. Well, it's been an incredible chat, man. I hope we can do more of these. And really look forward to what Temple Copal has ahead. And I definitely want everyone to try them. So where can they find them?
So you can find us at numerous stockists across the country, and right now with the COVID era, you can pretty much find us only online at www.templecopal.com. And that's Copal is Copal for those who aren't familiar. You can find us at on Instagram at Temple Copal, and yeah, just Google Temple Copal and there we are right there. Yeah, the website's great. Also, we're having a discount right now. If you put in the discount code Time Wheel, you get a 10% off discount. So all the listeners out there who are Time Wheel fans, go ahead and give that discount a go.
Let's go. Time will. Y'all get some Temple Copal, burn it, listen to some good music, vibe out, put on some red light therapy or, something. We'll have to jump into that
Absolutely.
next time.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And you can always reach out to, I'm sure, you can hit me up at templecopal@gmail.com if any listeners have any questions, or, if people want to bounce a dialogue with the both of us, I'd be open to that too.
absolutely. Love it. Thank you so much for joining, Zane, and have a great day.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it, brother. You take care. Much love.
Much love.